Okay, welcome everyone to this event organized by Global Visions. Tonight we will discuss the challenges and opportunities presented to us by artificial intelligence with a special focus on democracy, human rights and the Global South. My name is Max Talberg, I'm the founder and chairperson of the Global Visions Association. We act as a platform for the discussion on how the state of the world can be improved, especially from the point of view of global justice and equality. And we also highlight different societal visions regarding all of this. With us tonight we have Teivo Teivainen, who is Professor of World Politics at the University of Helsinki, Reetta Toivonen, who is Professor of Sustainability Sciences at the Helsinki Institute of Sustainability Science, and Matti Nelimarkka, University Lecturer of Social Data Science at the University of Helsinki and Head of the Helsinki Social Computing Group, and Bon Huego, Senior Lecturer in International Development Studies at the University of Jyväskylä and the current Chair of the Finnish Society for Development Research.
Yes, well, good evening on my behalf as well. I'm Astrid Aminov, the project planner at Global Visions, and I will be one of the moderators of this discussion. Firstly, I would like to thank all of our guests for taking the time to be here tonight and traveling to come here. But as we are short on time, I think we'll get right into the discussion. So, seeing as it's a significant election year, I think we'll start with the theme of democracy, but I would like to firstly take the time to define what artificial intelligence actually is, and I would hope that Matti would begin by answering this question.
Thank you so much for answering this quite challenging and quite topical question. I was also pushing this question because I think that artificial intelligence is one of those things that everyone is using quite flexibly in many ways. So I think that core part of artificial intelligence is that there's people, a lot of people doing all kind of work to make it happen. There's some code and there's some data and then there's some institutional practices where it's all situated. So it's situated technology. And then I sort of, why I wanted to have this question particularly and start with this, so was that large language models, ChatGPT and all that kind of things, they are just one example of artificial intelligence, but we have facial recognition technologies. I don't know what those cameras are doing. I'm betting that there is some facial recognition technology there already, and there's all sort of things that are artificial intelligence. So I was hoping that let's not only stick on generative AI and ChatGPT as the main focus of this discussion, but think broader also in terms of like autonomous vehicles, which are also
predictive
AI.
Policing or automatic decision making,
Yes.
on social benefits, for example, or e-recruiting.
And then, of course, the famous social media algorithms.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I feel there's this focus in, is it intelligence, and the whole question of is it like human intelligence, and I see kind of futile to debate. No, it's not like human intelligence. Of course not. It's called artificial intelligence. but I actually think sometimes instead of those futile dead ends on is it intelligence or not, like this machine learning, which is a term used quite a lot recently, I think perhaps it captures a little bit better the mechanisms of transmission of ideas and action, and also, I don't know, and the learning, like acquiring, skills and experience is perhaps something that humans and machines can share in this sense, and then we don't need to debate about is it really intelligence or...
Yeah, but I suppose that's very important because it's of course the kind of what you also say, that it's humans interacting, humans who are feeding in this intelligence, and of course there is then the kind of further automatic learning that can develop after that, and that's why, for example, artificial intelligence can develop certain biases because it has first learned not to pay attention to biases, and then it kind of, for example, in predictive policing, that it accumulates, and then we have a very biased and not very intelligent artificial intelligence.
But I think we should also understand AI in this, the evolution of global capitalism. It's like the digital phase of capitalist globalization. Whereby, as we also heard, it's part of digitalization. Basically, AIs are set of computer systems and digital technologies that that have the abilities and capacity to apply knowledge that are characteristic of human beings, like flexible, creative, productive, efficient. But at the same time, they are also unlike human beings because they have superhuman capabilities in terms of processing data and also in terms of efficiency and even effectiveness.
Well, on that, sometimes what we see as artificial intelligence literally are humans in Global South, like Amazon's famous shop where you could just walk in and grab everything and then walk out, and they used advanced image recognition systems to track what you were buying so that you would be billed correctly. It was all smoke and mirrors. There were humans in India looking at the video recordings and so on. So I find this really important that we recognize that it is indeed humans. A lot of human work goes there, sometimes illegally, like the case with most generative models. There most likely is some stuff that I've written and I've never given any permission for that, for example. But it's really interesting that we tend to sometimes forget this human aspect of this and really just say that, yes, we have these magical computers that are creating CO2 emissions some other place, and then we don't need to care about those. Then we just get results, nice cat pictures. That's been my main use for them for some time.
Thank you. I think that gave us quite a good different type of viewpoint of the definition of AI. I think I'll ask Teivo to firstly answer this, but everyone else can comment, of course. But as we move into the age of AI, what might endanger democracy, and in which ways might global power dynamics shift as a result, possibly?
Ooh, big question. Like Bon was pointing out, perhaps something about power mechanisms. Like I think, for example, we should look much more than we've done now on the ownership and property of who owns the algorithms and the machines and the corporations behind them.
Companies.
And the company, yeah, the big tech kind of, thing. In general, I think, of course, it also opens this machine learning or AI or whatever we want to call it, opens possibilities for, democratic decision making. Like you have new tools for deliberation and even voting. And I've been looking at one algorithmic dimension I've been looking at for some years is machine translation. And of course, you look at like global social movements, again, that Bon and Reheta also study how they interact. Somebody from Mexico and somebody from somewhere in Indonesia, they have no shared language, but then they just Google Translate everything and they coordinate action and all that. So there are all kinds of possibilities also there. But obviously the possibilities for control and domination, discipline are getting very powerful, and we see many people pointing out that like surveillance and manipulation and all that. So I mean, it might be a lame on the one hand, on the other hand, but I think there are true possibilities for human interaction, like in most technologies, but they are then again used for let's say harmful effects in terms of democracy. And actually, one interesting thing about this is it like human? What's the difference? Like, to what extent can the autonomous machines be able to distinguish, to learn when they are doing harm? Sort of as somebody interested in liberal political theory, the harm principle. Like, to what extent can we install, or can it be installed, that they are able to sort of discriminate between harmful and non-harmful effects and follow the harm principle. Actually, this is like the most crucial question if we think about autonomous weapons and killer robots and other autonomous weapons systems that are really scary, not only in terms of global apocalyptic thing, but also very locally, like having these killer robots all around is a real, I think it's a real threat, and it's obviously a threat to democracy.
Yeah, I think we can go to that also when we talk about human rights. But
Yeah.
I was also thinking that I was recently in Croatia, and when they were facing the last spring elections, and people were reporting that there was in the media, like even in kind of more regular media, news pieces that were produced by artificial intelligence, kind of translations, but also content-wise changed towards hate speech, for example, against Serbian minority, and they managed to slip into the kind of news outlets online. And so this kind of danger for democracy of this fake news, I think we have discussed that also in Finland in case of our elections, that how we kind of develop the media literacy among not the children, as we are all the time talking, but also among a bit older persons to understand that which news are created by humans with kind of content that is based on facts and what are the kind of fake news.
Something that I find really interesting in this discussion is that we are always faced with this sort of highlight of humans being the really good, and sometimes when I read, for example, on automated decision making and the criticism, which I completely agree, some of these systems are horrible, but then I've always wanted to do this art show where I would interview people coming from the Campi Kela office and ask if they felt that they were treated humanely and treated in a way. So partly I do think that AI, what it does is that it also forces us to reflect some of our established practices and established ways of doing stuff. And that can be both good for democracy, but also a danger for democracy. Same with like journalistic news. It doesn't need an AI to create completely nonsense news, as we've read from Seiska, for example, in recent days.
Yeah.
Bon.
But yeah, of course, earlier we defined what AI is, and I think we also have to define what democracy is. But Teivo here is a professor in politics, but basically I understand, well, my training is in political economy, so I understand democracy both as a political and economic category. And as we know, it's just about the study of the struggle for power and resources, politics and economy. And we know that it's about the question of who gets what, where, when, why, and for whom. And at this time, we know that who controls the data and information technology. And we should understand that in history, technology has always been the source of wealth and power. In AI and technological innovation, they are arena of contestation and it can lead to different tendencies. But at the moment, those who have the upper hand are the big tech oligarchs and then the elites, the political elites and the economic elites. So we need to ask the question about access. Yeah, Teivo mentioned about control and the sense of accountability. They are all part in asking about democracy. And democracy is very much related to, as what Reta and Mati mentioned, decision-making of citizens. Yeah, to what extent AI is leading to truth-telling and truth-seeking. Yeah, that's the challenge to our democracy at the moment. And the struggle is still ongoing, so we are not yet defeated. So I don't want to look at AI as something like a product, but more of it's within the process of becoming rather than a being, something like that.
But may I ask that how much is it actually problematized that the kind of ownership of our data is in so few hands, and when we use all kind of platforms, whatever, I mean, of course, the example of COVID-19, where we had to report about our health online in different places, and even when traveling. So, there is somebody who owns that data, and they are not many. So is there kind of problematizing this, like the movement of democratization of digital
There are even
Can you say
legal
something?
action like GDPR is supposed to protect us
Yeah.
against certain kind of data use. I'm now fighting with one of the platform companies for my rights as a European citizen. I'm so proud to be a European citizen at this point of times. But then I think that something that COVID also brought us is that because the infrastructure is operated by these companies, they start to have state-like powers. So if you remember Koronavilkku, the application, it needed to be approved by Apple and Google, and they decided certain approaches to ensure privacy of people in a particular way that they happen to like and fit nicely into US ideas about what is privacy and so on. And they actually blocked UK from releasing something. They said that this is not going to go on our platform. And that was, for me, some of the highlight that, these companies start to be almost like East Indian company. They just need their own army or something like that, and then they are ready to go. But they start to have really important role, not only in like owners of the data, but also owners as the tools that we use to communicate and operate and do everything. That I think is fairly scary as well, because then it's Google and Microsoft and Apple who choose what we can install on our phones.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. About the UK being out, I remember during book fair of Helsinki, there was this pretty famous writer from UK, and we went to a bar, and and then his sort of certificate to get into bar was not accepted by the bar because of that thing. About what Bon said, I think that sort of the organizational, or what all of you sort of said, hierarchies here. It's like fascinating. This I started thinking when we're talking about corporate power, like something like I don't know, Uber or Airbnb and those technologies. In some sense, one problem in corporate power is the hierarchies of you have the leadership and they represent and power, like or style, hierarchical leadership. In some sense, having algorithms, one could eliminate the need for bosses, ideally, right? You could have Uber algorithms and self-managed cooperative of independent car owners who connect through this wonderful algorithmic system and no need for bosses, right? But then in reality we have investors who need to have power, and we have sort of corporate structures coming to this platform, because platform sounds like more flat, less hierarchic in principle, and not like top-down bosses controlling everything. So this sort of promise there, and not really being able to realize that less hierarchic and perhaps potentially more democratic promise that AI-powered platforms may provide. What do you think? Mm-hmm.
Every now and then there's been discussions about cooperative platforms as a form of organizing this and having the ownership to people and stuff like that. Sadly, they've never been successful in practice, which I think is disappointing to that degree. But then at the same time, for example, Facebook, they now have the supervisory board, which is external from Facebook, that goes through their moderation decisions. So they've tried to sort of implement some democratic practices. I think that partly for the pushback that they are getting, they start to realize that we need to have a bit more openness. And then the second thing, of course, is that this is the best escape code ever. Like, yes, we just escalate it to our supervisory body and they make a decision in 2 years' time about if we were right or wrong. But they are starting to introduce some like proto-democratic ideas into those platform models, which I find really interesting, and maybe as something that could be fostered a bit more if they were slightly less capitalistic in their motives.
Just a follow-up question actually to do with this global power dynamics and the world order. Then how should we feel about this type of arms race discussion? So Saudi Arabia developing AI, China, Russia, surveillance, like how should we, does it mean then that we have to kind of give up the power to these companies in the West so that we kind of can protect Western conceptions of democracy? Or how do we then, what are the ideas of like the next 20 years, because something's going to happen obviously over the next decade that will be probably quite big.
Geopolitics table.
If I may say just a sentence or two without knowing too much about these developments in Saudi Arabia and India, but obviously we have systems and areas like the Council of Europe area that has also very well regulated artificial intelligence, its development, and also the kind of, now we have the new framework convention since this spring that is exactly regulating artificial intelligence, human rights, and democracy. But and in these kind of frameworks in Europe, also in the US, I don't know about all the other places, but or countries or areas, but there is a very strong emphasis on the anti-discrimination laws needing to be very strict and precise, and also the data protection laws need to be very clear and precise. So obviously, the idea that in a non-democratic context this kind of artificial intelligence is developed sounds scary to me.
Yeah. I see something. It's this European idea. Okay, we regulate and big tech and platforms and killer robots and whatnot, and then comes all right, but the Chinese they don't, or India doesn't, or whoever, Russians especially don't, and so this big dilemma is that you see like okay, if they don't, should we? If we don't, their killer robots become more powerful than ours, and then they come and kill us. So should we regulate or not? And in Finland we see this debate quite a lot. Should we follow certain standards? Should we regulate certain things? Should we agree with human rights agreements that regulate things? Oh, but look at Russians. They are a threat to us, so we can't afford to follow human rights, follow international treaties.
Or
and,
our own constitution.
Or our own constitution, or freedom to demonstrate, like with Turkey and stuff like that. So we see more and more this argument, they don't, so why should we? Like benchmarking with, before it was like we benchmark, we regulate AI and we regulate things, killer robots, because we are Finland and Nordic and Western and whatever. And now benchmarking, look, Russians don't do it, so why should we do it?
Yeah.
And it's a dilemma. I mean, maybe that's the way to go if you want to defend yourself.
If we
that's the
look,
argument.
Yeah, if we look at it in terms of geopolitical economy, it's obvious now that the hegemony of the United States is over. Yeah, it's has been increasingly contested. Research shows that China leads in AI and many critical technologies, and I think as we know, the United States has also tried to sanction and also ban transfer of technology to China. So China has also proven that that the principles of self-sufficiency and self-reliance are not at all old-fashioned, that a country like them can do. And it has also shown that, in development economics, that an inefficient manufacturing sector is still better than not to have a manufacturing sector at all. Yeah, so just like China had the Made in China 2025, so basically moving from low-tech, dirty, specialist to high-tech, upgrading it to high technology, and China is actually doing that. And this is also part of the reason why China doesn't want to have wars, because it's still in the process of developing. But what we are seeing now in the debate about technology innovation is also the securitization of the debate of technology. When military, intelligence, police people get into play, that's how they see issues about inter-imperialist rivalry. They see issues about the arms race that you're mentioning. Technological and military capabilities, and they say that it could also lead to China being the leader in making drones and all this, the robots that you were mentioning. So we are also witnessing that. But another shift is that it's not just an inter-imperialist rivalry. There are so many tendencies and trajectory. the evolution of the world economy and world politics is path dependent. Patterns of colonialism still there. The European Union continues to use its trade policy towards Africa to keep Africa a raw material producing country for its extractivism. So Africa will continue to specialize in being poor, in providing natural materials. And it's so clear among European policymakers that they would like to use the EU trade policy towards Africa so that it could secure, the key minerals, the rare earth minerals that can only be sourced from Africa. So there's also still a continuity of colonialist strategy in there. But at the same time, what we are seeing in the evolution of global capitalism now is that there is this, the completion of the world market. So there are already competing sites of accumulation. So it's the logic of competition in capitalism that is being at play, in this digitalization process. So no more hegemony or dominance of the United States and Europe. So now you even see global South. So even Europe and the United States will be forced, the governments and the corporations of the United States and Europe will have to compete with the governments and corporations in the global South. So there's also that. So different tendencies, and there's not just one trend going on. So that's actually my response. Call it democratization of it, it's a struggle, but still. But then the competition among states and the competition for accumulation is not at an uneven phase because the United States and Europe have had the first mover advantages.
So just to continue on that, for example, the TikTok ban in US or I don't know what's the status of that. There were two main reasons. One was that data goes to China, bad. And the other one is that the algorithm is somehow wrong, like the artificial intelligence, whatever we want to call. And of course, as a European, I was laughing on that because on Facebook, all my data goes to US, which is known to leak the data to military operation or, NSA. And the algorithm also has US bias in many ways of perceiving that. So that's, and then you spoke about this colonialization. So what I hope emerging actually, like China is developing their own for generative language models. Finland is developing their own, US is developing their own. I'm actually hoping that we would have more plurality on those, and then you could choose that, do I want to use Chinese language model to understand this phenomenon, or would I prefer using a Finnish language model? I would get quite different responses of those, but highlighting that this sort of, it's becoming a tool of making politics, this establishing of the platforms and so on, and it has already been previously, we just haven't been that vocal about that because it's all been US-centric.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that in global political economy now, we are witnessing the rise of state capitalism. So you now see China massively investing, in technological innovations. Trump promises to do that at this time because that's the strategy how they really win. It's just like it's only Elon Musk saying that he did it. He was so innovative on his own terms. So the neoliberal argument that says that the MNCs and the TNCs are the engine of innovation is not true, because if you look at Elon Musk and the big tech oligarchs, they are rent seekers. Yeah, they got so much of it. Pharmaceutical industries, have had a lot of money from state support. So I think that's also one of the most important thing, whether it's democratic or not, because the state, meaning state money, is involved in there, meaning that's people's money. So they now view the state as a co-innovator. Yeah, but then. To what extent citizens, can determine where the investments of state money go. So maybe in the strategizing in the vision part, we can talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, actually, this is a good point to shift to discussing the Global South and human rights. So I would like Bond to begin, sorry, and then Reetta, hopefully you can continue. But what risks does AI present in terms of increasing the existing inequalities of marginalized communities in the Global South?
Yeah. Well, yeah, earlier we were having discussion also about the Global South, whether it's still appropriate to be used. I believe so. Of course, concepts are contested and concepts are political. Concepts are used for someone in a particular purpose. You look at the Global South as a concept, not in terms of location or a metaphor for underdevelopment. You use that in processual and relational terms, in terms of the historical process of maldevelopment that has happened, to the former colonies. So the history of colonialism, and then so that's how you see Global South as a concept viewed in terms of process. The other way of looking at it is in terms of relations, and what do you mean by that is the relation of inequality. Of course, Global South is characterized by diversity. Yeah, but then there's also shared history, and that is colonialism, and then commonality, which is underdevelopment. So once we have agreed on using that term Global South, in terms of developing and treating these countries, you don't treat these countries at par with the well-developed ones. For instance, the idea of just transition, like sustainable transitions for Finland will be different from countries in the Philippines or India. So that already provides you a context why that sense of the Global South is important. And then there's always this tendency of comparing the United States and China. But then China and the U.S. also have had different levels of economic development. They have had different springboards, to development. But in general, AI, again, it has different tendencies. What we are witnessing is that it is widening inequalities. But inequalities have many levels. There are national inequalities. So you see there the elites and the masses, the rich and the poor locally. And then there are also class inequalities. So between the capitalists and the workers. And then so far, obviously, and based on research, AI and the new technologies are actually exacerbating and widening inequalities. Again, we go back to the issue of the access and control of these technologies. And there's, of course, global inequalities. So far, again, the global north has the upper hand over the Global South. But then you see some catching up being done by big countries like China. Now I'm talking about the global aspect because that would be a bit trickier. In my classes, I would when students would ask, how do you characterize the geopolitical economy at the moment? So I just use 3 words. So I say that China is a technology, because it's really producing anything and everything now. And the secret to economic wealth historically is that you must produce things of value, And that strategy has been denied on the Global South for many, many years. But China has learned that. That was the strategy of the US and the Europe, And then, so China is a technology. Europe, why is it lagging behind and stagnant? Europe is a museum. It continues to look back at the past, the glory of the past. It has forgotten innovation, technological innovation. And then US, I said, US is a wall, meaning Wall Street, because the United States has allowed finance capital, those who are just playing the stock market, to take the upper hand and forgetting, productive capital, the innovators and the scientists and the engineers. And in economic and business sense, among the presidential candidates in the United States, who got that sense? I'm afraid to say that, but and I think this is also one of the reasons why this guy is being popular, because he has this business and economic sense on how to make America, very strong again. Yeah.
Greta, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I was thinking about the concept of global south because, for example, I know that in northern parts of the globe, there are also a lot of communities who are calling themselves as kind of in this terminology of global south, meaning exactly, these elements and the processes of colonialism, the kind of not being able to develop in their own terms and the kind of being marginalized. But I was thinking about the question about the marginalization now a bit, I suppose, in a quite different context than you were now describing. You were describing really in a great way the kind of economic inequalities. I was thinking more concretely about the kind of artificial intelligence and its impact on marginalized groups or vulnerable groups or minority-sized groups, however, what kind of concepts you want to use here. That because on the one side, one could say that the artificial intelligence has the kind of benefit that was also mentioned here, that it can also produce unbiased decision-making. For example, you mentioned Kela, that there is a human discriminator is put outside of the box. I'm now not saying anything against Kela, so sorry, I just took the example, but I have no information that I would like to share here about Kela. But I mean, in general, that there are kind of decisions, for example, banks deciding on loans or sometimes also the decisions on health or social benefits, that it may be a better thing that it's done by a machine that kind of doesn't discriminate on the basis of language, appearance, whatever, clothing of a person who is applying for something. But then that's another aspect that the other thing is that when we said in the beginning that these systems have to be taught, so somebody has to teach them that how humans look like, how human behaves. And now we have kind of had several studies showing that the kind of information fed into these systems is very narrow and very white and very male. So we have the kind of gender discrepancy coming up that the kind of artificial intelligence-based models don't, for example, understand the gender differences or age differences or cultural differences, and also the kind of situations in which people live. So there was, for example, one study about the kind of predictive policing that showed that in certain area there was like more criminal activities, how do you say, more crime, and then that was an area that was very ethnically segregated area. So the kind of equally, okay, these people from this country, they are all criminals. And then when the study started to look how they came to this conclusion was to show that actually, because there had been so much policing, kind of controlling in a certain area, it looked like that area was more criminal, even though it was not. And then, therefore, the kind of information that was fed to these models that, for example, people with certain characteristics or certain language or ethnic background are more criminal was not true. But the decision making by the artificial systems kind of provided this strong bias. There was also a big study in the US actually about the healthcare, kind of the healthcare decisions, automatic healthcare decisions by the insurance companies. And it showed that that white people were much more easily kind of defined as ill in a way that they get the benefits of the insurance, whereas black people very often were kind of denied. And the reason was only that the information that had been fed to that system was more coming from the white background. So we have, the kind of, and therefore I'm saying that that the kind of importance of the anti-discrimination law And data protection laws are so important that maybe working with, for example, equality bodies, I mean institutions working on equality, one could go kind of make sure that these systems are not biased in a way as we humans are.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Yeah.
just
So-
Matti had a question. Then I'll
Maybe sort of continuing on that, what I've spoken every now and then is that you take a young, naive algorithm who's never seen the society, and then you show them a bunch of examples that this is how you behave, this is how you behave, and the outcome is racist or discriminatory. And then it's like, yeah, but the algorithm just did what we've been doing for all the time. So this is something that I find really interesting, that we are returning maybe to hopefully returning to self-reflection also a bit, that our systems have been really bad for times. Like Airbnb also had these different rental recommendations depending on the housing district. So black housing districts would get smaller rental recommendation compared to white housing districts. And it was based on rental data, not on their idea that they want to discriminate, but the fact that for 60 years or something like that, that has been the reality of the society. And that's something that I every now and then miss on these discussions, is that, yeah, we find all sort of issues about AI, but then we maybe don't jump back into thinking that actually the AI is showing us our society in a different lens, and then we are like, oh, I don't really like this representation of our society. I'm like, well, maybe we should fix the society, not try to fix the AI.
Yeah, we are following on. Actually, Matti also mentioned it earlier in the beginning, but it's also complementary to what Reta mentioned. I led a study on algorithmic management focused on the Nordic cases, and we actually cited there are some cases like Nordic companies, they won't mention from which country, presenting themselves as decent and responsible businesses, but they are actually using the global south as guinea pigs or site of experimentation. So, for instance, we had cases like things that cannot be done in Norway because it's illegal, it's unethical, now being used in a country like India with with poor legal infrastructure in terms of data protection, privacy rights, unorganized labor unions, and it's being so we are seeing the trend now. This is part of inequality of offshoring and outsourcing unethical AI and digital technologies. So yeah, it's part of data extractivism. Yeah, for the benefit of global north countries, but at the same time they do sometimes they call it like the AI washing or something like that. They are innovative but at the same time responsible, but then they offshore this and that. So my main point here is that we will be lost if we miss out the global perspective. Yeah. And that's how we should understand so many issues now, from sustainability, environmental, to technological in global terms. And I think this is also what I always try to impress on students, also here in Finland, especially me coming from the global south. And I think the big challenge among the youth in Finland and probably the older generation is insularity. Yeah, so meaning that how can we really mobilize and raise the consciousness of the youth, students, and the entire population. Why they should care about what's happening. Outside their own community, outside their own country. Why should they care about other cultures and other systems? Because digitalization is global, climate change is global. You can always claim to be environmentalist. Yeah, you say, well, my community, Finland is so clean, but you don't understand, the production process. You offshore the technologies, and also you outsource it from other. The same thing which what's happening in digitalization right now. It may be effective here. Your companies may profit from this part of the world, but then they're doing that at the expense of people in the global south, as what what Matti mentioned earlier in the beginning, and also Retta just now. Yeah.
Thank you. Teivo, do you want to comment anything?
Well, there were many excellent points there. Maybe about China, since it was mentioned many times, and like whether it's obvious China is having a bigger role than before, and then it makes West a little bit uneasy. For example, in United Nations, within UNESCO that I follow a little bit, there's this plan to have this big, some center of major educational center of UNESCO in Shanghai. And now people in countries like ours are getting a little bit nervous, like, hey, but is China providing AI learning there for Africa, for example? And will this mean that China will have another possibility to become a global leader in some sense in artificial intelligence related things if it's given a certain status of a certain kind of educational center where there would be a lot of resources? And then is this a problem or is this a possibility? And now we heard that, I don't know, Matti was maybe saying maybe it's good if China comes and plays a bigger role. I don't know if I heard wrong, but it's complicated.
I think he was saying that kind of diversify the language models and
different value bases. I think that fundamentally what is taken, I've been reading some Cold War political science recently to understand the situation again.
Cold War political science.
Yes. Wonderful stuff. And there were also a huge value conflict between those things. And then what I was reading from there is that how did science happen even in the midst of strong value conflicts between different things? And it happened, even in political science. Really nice paper, in my opinion. But I really think that it's also beneficial for us, because if there's more things out there, then we can also maybe stop and ask that, okay, what actually would be the infamous European values in an AI? European values, I think, are tossed away always and so on, but we really haven't had, because we've been using systems from US quite a lot, except Spotify.
I suppose.
And SAP.
Yeah, if I look at the developments in the Council of Europe, and so the Council of Europe human rights bodies have been very active, I think, the last 10 years, so not very long time. And to be honest, I think this is a very relevant point that you are making, because it seems that in the discussions, it's more about, how can we control our data? It's less about the kind of innovative thinking that how can we be participating in creating the kind of content and so on. So how to ensure that our health data is, for example, not used for wrong purposes. Less about thinking that the kind of whole creation of these sources, because at the same time, we know that that all kind of artificial intelligence stuff is being used everywhere in our everyday life with the face recognition cameras and kind of all this predictive policing stuff, the profiling stuff, and not to speak about all the kind of automatic decision making in all kind of things that and then we know that all these kind of, for example, face recognition is a very poor technology. I think there was a study in India, in police of New Delhi, that showed that 2% of the face recognitions went right. The rest of it, so 98%, was targeting especially the Indian minorities that kind of looked somehow criminal according to the face recognition machines, and similar studies also in Brazil and from elsewhere. So I think the European countries are more interested in developing like more effective technologies, and then being more cautious that, hey, all these new companies and startups, they have to follow the kind of anti-discrimination laws and the data protection laws and how to ensure that they don't go over the limits. But this other discussion is, I suppose, quite limited if I think now honestly back to the discussions that I have followed.
Okay, I'm going to make sure we get this question, and this one is for Reetta, so let's shift more into human rights and what are the implications of artificial intelligence on human rights, particularly concerning the protection of vulnerable populations? And of course, you've already discussed this, but let's go in a bit deeper if there's something still to say.
Yeah, I think we kind of went into that right when we started with the discussion on the implications on democracy. So the human rights aspect is a very difficult one because, as I said, that for example, Council of Europe has now developed this convention that is looking at the artificial intelligence, human rights and democracy, which is a kind of very important step by the 46 countries now that are at the Council of Europe. And there, for example, the one big emphasis is, in addition to what I said already, the kind of importance of developing really strong anti-discrimination laws and data protection laws, the kind of emphasis on how the artificial intelligence devices and programs actually have an adverse effect on minorities. So especially in the European case, Roma that are targeted, but also all kind of minorities that are not white and male, so to say. So and there the kind of issue is that that there are several studies showing that, for example, in automated decision making, for example, in the social security sector, in many countries, discriminates against Roma applicants, and the kind of reasons are very not very easy to detect because they are kind of not based on the name. That could be because that's kind of the benefit. It's also not based that the kind of the decision-making body could see that this person is Roma, but it kind of calculates all kind of other things like where the person lives and what is the income of that family and so on, and because these systems have not been fed, they have not been trained with the kind of diversity of life situations and diversity of kind of cultural backgrounds, religions. Therefore, they kind of start, they make decisions that are discriminating in their effect. So I'm kind of saying that very few cases I would know where the artificial intelligence is from the beginning made to discriminate, so that there's a deliberate purpose for discrimination. But then this kind of lack of diversity, lack of engagement leads to the kind of biases and human rights violations in this decision making. Obviously, people can always complain when they get a decision and they see that it's unfair, but we know that there is also certain populations who are less inclined in going to court because it always involves cost and resources and kind of knowledge about systems. Yeah. So that would be the short answer.
But I think just to follow it up, there are two aspects there, well, main aspects in understanding AI and human rights. One, Reetta already mentioned about the outcome of AI. So threats to data protection, privacy, and civil liberties. Those are related to human rights. But what puzzles me the most would be on the design of an AI technology. Because in theory, you can design a particular technology according to human rights based principles. That's theoretically. But in reality, it's just business. So it's based on the logic of competition. Why there is algorithmic management, for instance, is because of the convergence of technological revolution and also the imperatives of capitalist competition. So they are using technology, AI, and algorithms to what? It's the capitalist strategy. So that means that you have to reduce the cost of labor, increase your output, and also to outdo your competitor. So it's really the logic of competition capitalism that is really driving the design of the AI technologies. And then the struggle now is here. Maybe it's for the future and utopian vision. To what extent we as human rights defenders can really compete with this kind of designing. After all, data analysts, scientists, people like you, engineers are also workers. But that kind of identity have been deprived and removed or destroyed because of this ideological offensive now. And again, it's an attack on democracy because the mantra now is slogans that we are all innovators, we are all entrepreneurs, we are all capitalists. Even like the food delivery drivers, Uber drivers, they are not viewed anymore as workers, but as entrepreneurs and capitalists. And that has implications in our view about human rights and democracy, because the big tech oligarchs are saying that AI is liberating. You are not anymore employees and workers. You are your own boss.
That's what Teivo said,
So
the system
you
where you kind of can rely
you
that we are
so
on equal
there's
basis.
an ideological offensive in there as well. So I think that has implications for human rights. But then in Europe, civil society has been pushing forward to in what we call human in command. Yeah. So meaning that it should be explainable. It should be, it should not let this automated decision making, which just leads to biases, and racism and discrimination and all. But of course, we have to ask the question, who's human is it representing, and whose human is it trying to protect? But we should also not forget that that even the managers using technologies and communication AI, they are also at a loss. They don't know how these things are functioning. Yeah. So there are hallucinations in technology as well. And then in human rights legislation, when you have this technology, whether you allow that in regulation, the question is that and transparency is easy in any legislation. I think the most sensitive issue in a democracy is accountability. What if there's a new technology now? And then, of course, the first principle is do no harm. But then, what if this new technology causes harm? Who will be accountable? Mm-hmm. So if managers implement and use that in their companies, and then it causes harm on the workers, and then they would say, we use that in good faith. That was the defense.
I was thinking about our new health system, Apotti.
Wonderful system.
Yeah, we use that in good faith, but then we should not be accountable to that. And I think that's one of the difficulties in legislating and regulating AI. Who will be accountable? Because accountability has to do with punitive measures. Who will be punished by law and to what extent? Yeah.
But if I can hear sort of, you were speaking about the human in the loop and you were speaking about this AI discrimination, I really want to emphasize that there are humans in the system as well in many places. And one of my favorite automated decision-making discrimination paper was about provisioning temporary houses for like homeless people in some place in US. I don't remember the details. And as you might guess, it was completely racist, unsurprisingly. And they started to check that, and actually the algorithm checked out, like the machine code checked out, but the data was entered by a clerk. That clerk looked at the face value and took that into account when entering the details into the system. So if that was a nice person, then you could enter some details that would get the house slightly quicker, and then if it was a nasty person or smelled bad or something like that, then you can choose other values, which I think also highlight these really weird dynamics that we are having, that it's humans and machines who work together to create these systems. And
somebody makes money out of it.
of course, yes, there's always someone making money out of this.
Teivo, any final comments of this section before we move to the...
These machines, is it machines or humans? I had a, I'm writing a book about hooked cross or the swastika, right?
Cool.
And then there's this thing about algorithmic control. In Finland, we like to, our swastika, it has nothing to do with the Nazi one, right? And suppose, let's assume that's the case, and let's assume we know it. Then then you go to, like, let's say, Finnish Air Force symbols, or even, I don't know, Vasa city, some symbol, or even Mikkeli, some symbol where there are different kinds of swastika. You go to Google image site, all of them have a stamp. This image is forbidden in Germany, Czech Republic, and this, and all kinds of laws. So I've been trying to understand, is it like an algorithmic thing? You know, they recognize there's a swastika. Swastika is bad, it's forbidden. Bam, we put the stamp on things that in Finland many people consider, and then comes Asian kind of experience on that. But somebody was telling me, no, it's actually humans who are looking at them, and they make the decisions. And I want to find out. You seem to know these things. So how is it?
I know, for example, for Germany, that Germany has this rather new law from 2017, maybe, that is called network law and Netzwerksumsetzungsgesetz or something like that. But it's where they had to, through this law, they had to hire, like YouTube and whatever platforms they are, they had to hire people to go through all kind of materials online and exactly put warnings or remove
like
stuff.
hate symbols, hate speech.
Yeah.
And usually those people are somewhere far away and paid like 1 cent per image or something like that. So then they are looking at those, and maybe they don't recognize that the direction is different between the German swastika and the Finnish swastika.
Everybody here thinks it's different, but it isn't. Yeah.
My mistake.
You ask any Finn, they say, no, it's the reverse.
I remember that there was something like that, but yes.
Yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter.
And this also goes into sort of the need to contextualize and localize these systems for further details. So something that's completely illegal in Germany might not be completely illegal in Finland.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be the end of my part of the discussion, but I'll leave you with a final quote from a 1960s poet of counterculture who envisioned a future society, a utopia, and it was titled All Watched Over by Machines of Loving Grace. I suggest you Google it. He envisioned a society way in the future where the machines would be doing all the work and they would be taking care of the humans. And
It's called...
it's Robert, do you remember?
No, but historically you can see that if you study technology, there is this industrialists who argue for the autogenesis. Yeah, it says that production system without workers, and this is the AI being done.
But I'll give you the name at the end, but now I'll give it over to Max.
Yeah, so let's finally discuss the potential of artificial intelligence and its role in envisioning a better future and also making those visions a reality. One could argue that we now have a better opportunity than ever before to make the world truly just and equal, and that this opportunity is greatly enhanced by the potential of artificial intelligence. But at the same time, one could also remark that it presents us with immense threats, which might be more severe than ever before, if the potential of artificial intelligence is utilized in a destructive way. So what is your view of the future potential of AI, and how do we make this potential a reality and the opportunities it presents a reality? Who would like to go first?
No, maybe it's easy for me because I have decided here to take the kind of role of talking about the legal guarantees and putting some hope in kind of conventions and agreements that states make. So as in any human rights, the states are responsible for guaranteeing that human rights are ensured. So it's not the companies, it's the states. And all these human rights agreements are made between states. And of course, this means that in ideal case, the states would be also controlling any company or any activity taking place on their grounds, which is a bit problematic with this international multilateral companies that are not really maybe having headquarters in our countries, but somewhere else, and they still have operating in our countries. But anyway, so I kind of put my hope in the development of the legal treaties, and also treaties that will even more force the companies, even the multilateral, multi-international companies, to be bound by these treaties that would ensure that there is a kind of joint basis that we agree on, that how we regulate and how we produce these kind of language models and different technologies for artificial intelligence. I think it's a vision that is quite unrealistic, and especially when I listen to you guys, I think, oh, it's really unrealistic. But at least on the European level, and then of course Europe may be losing because of this, that we decide that, okay, we are going to be the good guys and we are going to regulate that, but then the other are bad guys, and then we are in trouble. But I don't know anything about, for example, how much in the UN Security Council the kind of artificial intelligence has been discussed as something that should be also taken into account for global security matters. But it seems that this is a very good time for this discussion, and I think this is like very, very fresh area, thinking that it's only now that, for example, the Council of Europe were able to kind of agree on the terms of reference in this field. So, yeah, divided hope and despair. I don't know.
Yeah, but maybe they are like this thing about the consequences, like these new European regulations. I think you've been referring to on like corporate responsibility and due diligence and all that. There is this idea, I think now more like the thing like I did something in good faith is no longer a good argument.
No,
But
no.
it's like, you know, if your production chain or something, there's something bad happening, it's, oh, I didn't know that. No, you must know. It's your responsibility. And now there's more and more that, and maybe in AI that could be applied if we want to take a nice and optimistic take on the possibilities of European, here comes the European nanny state, we regulate your AI, please. Others, don't make killer robots. So, but let me give you my own nice tech utopia perspective. I think artificial intelligence is going to save Finnish language. And in the future here we would be speaking in Finnish and not in this imperialist language. And why? Because the translation machines are getting better and better. 5 years ago, when I started a bit more, I started talking about they are so bad, the machines, for translating. Oh, they are so much better now than they were, let's say, 7 years ago. Think about the next 10 years, next 50 years, they are already pretty good. My point is, in the university, for example, we have this pressure to do everything in English because it's global world and we need to be understood and all that. And that's why we write in English. We publish in English and we start losing the capability of creating Finnish concepts. And we've been thinking 10 years ago, English was more important 10 years ago, now it's more, and we think it will become, and finally Finnish becomes a kitchen language, as it's sometimes said. No, technology helps, AI helps, algorithms help, because soon we'll be in a moment where we can at least write and perhaps talk in Finnish. And there are these machines, we write in our platform, or our machine in Finnish, and everybody everywhere will be able to read it. Good enough, never perfect. Translation is never perfect. Good enough in their own language, in their own platforms. And we have more incentives to use Finnish. And we will be talking more in Finnish. We will be producing more science in Finnish, perhaps even discussions like this will be in Finnish, all because of the algorithms. Algorithms will save the Finnish language, at least as an academic language. So that's my optimistic techno-fix take on this issue.
What about you, Matti?
Matti doesn't look like he would be.
Well,
Well,
I've been thinking that back in the days when computers were coming to workplaces, so we are speaking of late 80s, early 90s, Nordic countries observed that this is actually going to change the work practices quite a lot. Being Nordic countries, they decided that employees need to be involved in designing these systems. So they created something called the Nordic participatory design approach, where employees actually had some impact on the systems that they were developing. And I'm thinking systems like Sisu or Apotti or SAP, if someone has experience of those, yes. That those could be so much better if we would have some say. And then this goes back to the sort of idea of democracy, that maybe these sort of platforms and AI itself in various ways also become something that instead of being few companies that develop those, you would have a democratic process of deciding where, for example, for large language models, where we do put the guardrails. Now it's decided by OpenAI, but I think that we should have the freedom to say that, yeah, in Finland, I think that we should allow more of this kind of talk and maybe less this kind of talk, because the standards are also so different. No, I'm not going to the example that I always use this because this is live streamed, so or stored a long time. So I'm dreaming of a future of technology development that would actually incorporate core ideas of democracy into the technology development itself. Sadly, not saving Finnish language while doing so.
but I saw that OpenAI was, for example, recruiting kind of experts, for example, in human rights. And they were, in this announcement, they were looking for people from as diverse as possible backgrounds. So they are...
They are starting to realize that they, even if it ruins their capitalist machine a bit, they've started to realize that it's bad press and it might hurt them even worse if they don't do something like this. So maybe capitalist model is working.
Yeah.
Okay, Bon.
Well, there are discursive, in terms of discourse and also policy making. I already mentioned earlier that technological innovation is an arena of struggle, is a battleground of opposing tendencies. The fight is not over. We are in there, but then we really need to catch up. As academics, as civil society groups, and also even as labor unions. But discursively, even in the academia and in policy making, there is one indispensable actor that is underrepresented. These are the workers. Even if you look at innovation studies and theories, development economics, and even political economy, the way they view laborers and workers, that they are only passive, and reactive recipients of technological innovation, rather than workers as a proactive force. Yeah. So you hear that, like, even in the legislations, you would see workers need to adjust. Education policy, human capital development, digitalization. Universities really need to make our students prepared for the labor market. Flexibility of labor. Easy hire, easy fire. You have to be highly skilled, highly educated. You cannot afford to be so weak. You cannot be so sickly, because you should be ready also. The whims of the labor market, in and out of the labor market, to be you should be mobile, fluid, but also disposable worker. So that's how we are also training the youth now. That's the education policy. But that also misses the point about the agency of workers. Yeah. Because workers are the ones who are the lifeblood of data and innovation. Engineers, scientists, data analysts, they are all workers. Yeah, but they lose that kind of perspective. So technology has really progressive potentials, but the reality is so regressive. So the challenge now is how to make technology more liberating rather than oppressive or exploitative. So, how can we make technology as a liberating tool for, for human and social flourishing? Just like yesterday, I had this discussion also about human capital and education policy, and the education agenda now is different from what we were, in earlier. But maybe Teivo is more of an expert at that because he's the chair of the Finnish UNESCO Commission on Education Policy. But in terms of policy, I hope that because I've done a review of literature, I also read the debates at the EU level. So the way they frame and analyze issues, it's more on the liberalist. Liberalism is important. I am for liberalism, civil liberties, human rights, and all. But the debate on regulation has to do GDPR and also AI regulation. It has to do with the individual rights, civil rights, but they don't extend to the collective rights of workers. Yeah. And then the way I also see it is that policy debate on AI is also limited to the classification of risk. Yeah. They also limit it to the debate between under-regulation and over-regulation. I hope we should not be limited in that, because if we would like to democratize AI, as Teivo would always say, in democracy, what is the most important question is representation. That workers and citizens should be represented in the design and implementation of AI and new digital technologies. So that's the key, representation.
What then about your views on the long-term future potential of AI? What are your thoughts? Some visions or what are your thoughts?
Everybody will be killed.
I think that the big problem with AI has been always this cycle of overpromise and then surprise coming. Like for example, I never took the driving school because 10 years ago self-driving cars were supposed to be just arriving, and now they are slowly and steadily in really limited setting coming out. So I think that making this future forecast is really difficult because the companies promise almost anything, and then we'll see what happens in somewhat longer term. That said, I think that the sort of role of this new actor of artificial something as part of our society, that's going to stick clearly, and then I'm hoping that it actually forces us to reflect quite a lot about ourselves and what humanity is, because then we come to this fundamental question that if we want to teach the system to be nice, for lack of better word, we actually need to think quite a lot about what are the values that we think are about niceness and how we protect those, and what's the core of those values, how we formulate them, how we explain them, and maybe humanity raises to higher level of shared values and visions.
I am Team Matti. Totally.
Please.
Maybe just to add one future thing, I think in the exploration of outer space, which will be very, very, very important in the coming times if we get there, then perhaps that's an area where for settler colonialism of planets and other places, these autonomous robots can come out quite handy, right? And then they need to be pretty autonomous out there. And it may sound like science fiction almost as much as translation machines sounded not so long time ago, but it's so I think that might be one field where different kinds of autonomous machine learning machines, robots, will be important
for
and
me,
useful, or maybe harmful to somebody. Maybe harmful to someone, I don't know.
But that's my vision. That's probably a billionaire's vision, like aerospace. I consider that as as a distraction. Because when we can develop technology and AI in such a way that we could address, really important things in our own planet. Climate change is, it's a threat to our existence, and also even like health, cancer, and many of the diseases. And that's just I'm more realistic, and I want maybe billionaires and then states will really have to invest in this. We were able to prove that in fast innovation during the pandemic. Vaccines were developed so fast, so long as human beings will just continue. So I think one of the best things that Biden said when he was starting is that we can cure cancer, because it was personal for him. But then I think those are the simple things that we could also do. But when it comes to aerospace and all those things, I really think it's a billionaire's distraction on what we should actually be doing. Maybe I'm so planetist, as you call it, or earthist.
Yeah.
And I think but you make also a very important point there that, of course, many of these kind of AI-based devices produce a lot of pollution. So that if you think about just about the chat GPT, how much even one question there is polluting. So I don't know if by that we are actually destroying the basis of the whole.
Most likely.
Because if we really take climate change finally seriously, that would mean that we would drop all the kind of electricity using devices as soon as possible.
But this is something where it's also easy to get fooled. I was reading this news headline which was saying that generative image generation is more environmentally friendly than actually hiring humans for doing the same labor, because you know how much resources humans take. Like, you are missing the point. Like, if I hire a human to do something, I'm not going to use it for every lecture slide, but if I need to do lecture slides, I will use generative AI for all the lecture slides to make it really customized and so on. So it was like, you might be correct that humans themselves are also producing a lot of all kind of stuff to live and need food, and other kind of things. But then the scale is just different.
Yeah. Yes.
I just have one final question or insight. If we think about the most marginalized people on the planet, like the people who will obviously be affected most by climate change, the people who do not even have access to the internet, then do you see anything technology could a positive change in the next 30 years? Could it solve water crises? Could technology solve, help agriculture develop in the global south and countries such as Africa that will be affected mostly by climate change? Do you see, because they do say that cancer probably will be cured, but then the question will be, is it going to be cured for everyone, or is it just us?
So today already there are quite small but innovative projects, for example, to bring internet to very remote places where there is no electricity. And one of the reasons has been, at least and kind of the good people have said, that is also providing kind of climate warning when there's like a sandstorm coming or so, that these devices or that internet connection can be used for warning for extreme climate situations. But otherwise, I'm not an expert on this, so I should shut up.
Yeah, it's always theoretically and practically, the realm of the technologically feasible is so huge. Yeah. Sometimes if you look at the relationship between technology, economy, society, and the environment, the realm of the technology feasible is greater than the realm of the economically profitable. The realm of the economically profitable is also bigger than the realm of the socially acceptable. But then the realm of the socially acceptable is also bigger than what is ecologically sustainable. So you see that kind of relation. But in terms of technology, it could be limitless as well. It's based on idea, but there's a promising concept that even the European Union has been talking about it: selective innovation. So meaning that you don't have to automate everything. For instance, in Japan, in Asia, there are many, just for the sake of culture and heritage, you don't have to even if it's feasible, you can do it. But then, of course, it all boils down to our public purpose. What kind of social value system that you would like. We would like to preserve culture, we would like to preserve the language and something like that. So it can be done. So that's called selective innovation. And I think we should also discipline companies, Apple and others, they have this strategy in design called planned obsolescence. So that's like Samsung, every year it's planned obsolescence. That it's also wasteful and also not good for the planet, but it's very profitable for them. And this is also part of the regressive aspect of capitalist technological innovation. Yeah, because it's so market dependent. So they think that it will be profitable to just, do the gradual incremental innovation product and all. So that should be disciplined. And also, finally, as we know, technology is political. It is not neutral. It depends on the value system of the society and also the political normativities. And it boils down also to the question. It depends also on whose political party in there. The Greens, the Social Democrats, or the right wing, and the neoliberals would have different agenda in terms of AI regulation. Yeah, neoliberals don't like regulation because it stifles innovation. But then the right wing, I don't know much about their agenda, but maybe they're close to neoliberals at the moment. They hate regulation. Yeah, technology is political.
Technology indeed is political, but then your question on like, do we see something? I'm looking back on the past several decades of us not doing anything to solve problems for other places, or then when we try to solve them, they usually are solving the wrong problems, like one laptop per child, or then there was also the water foundation that was children playing together and stuff like that. So there's also a really bad track record of us trying to innovate and use advanced technology and not turning out. So I'm not optimistic of us actually being able to change anything meaningful. It should be more local.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this interesting discussion. And now we have a bit over 15 minutes for some audience questions. So please raise your hand and then say your name when you ask your question, and we'll give you the microphone.
Hello. I have a question to follow up the discussion just before. And I'm looking for ideas now. How could artificial intelligence be utilized in a concrete way globally to enhance democracy and human rights?
A little question that you posed there.
I can start.
Yes.
This actually is research that I didn't fully believe, but has been published. And I was one of the reviewers as well. So the idea was there that they used machine learning and advanced language models to change the Facebook newsfeed so that instead of showing popular content, it would show pro-democratic content. And this was where I was slightly confused, because how you define pro-democratic is challenging. But that was one idea where it was really like going back into the question that how we recommend content, and could we recommend content that pushes forward for democratic values, my asterisk being that they really did poor job on defining democratic values, in my opinion. But that was an actual use that sort of tried to push democracy forward, so that you would see on your Facebook content more democracy supporting content and less ideas about going to certain places and take over the Congress building, for example.
Reetta, did you have?
Yeah, it's a step by step. Again, I said it's technology and innovation. There are political democracy and human rights issues. Is also, it would be a product of the struggle that we are having. In reality, in concrete terms, we should really understand who's the enemy now of democracy, of democratizing technology and AI. It's the big tech oligarchs. So we really have to discipline them. The problem with the legislation and regulation, there is the so-called temporal barrier, because innovation, the phasing of innovation is so fast, but political debates in the parliament is so slow. Yeah. And then you also have a lot of vested interest there, and big tech oligarchs, as we know, with their wealth and power, they have political connections, so they can also influence. And then, in terms, if you put it in a global perspective, the issue would become more complicated, because I am in favor of global South solidarity, but then I don't want to romanticize the global South myself, because there are also terrible, autocratic regimes in there. Yeah, but I think what we can do is that first, that the states and the workers and civil society should understand that they have the agency to affect the innovation process. And that kind of agency is being really taken away by them through brainwashing by big tech oligarchs. Just like, it's just like a technologically determinist world. You just have to adjust to us, So that one, the state, public authorities, and civil society and labor unions, universities should really take and reclaim, innovation. Even in terms of this course, that's a starting point. Okay, the political regimes is important. I am for democracy and all, but as they say in solidarity work, yeah, necessity is the mother of solidarity. Yeah, sometimes you don't agree with people you work with authoritarian figures and all, but you really have this particular agenda. So somehow you can set aside that for now. It's we cannot be too idealistic. We don't live in a utopian world. It's just being realistic about it. And then in Global South can do something about it. So just to recognize the agency. And one thing, we have also noted and realized that big tech oligarchs, don't care about the well-being and wellness of citizens and workers, unless the public authorities and civil society and labor unions, do something about it. So it's on us, being part of the civil society, to really put the pressure on, recognize that we have the agency. I think that's where democracy would come in, because I don't want to really talk about democracy as an end goal. I would like to see it more in terms of process. So it's democratization, yeah. And then in that process, there are different trajectories and tendencies, yeah. So it's, again, I said, it's in the process of becoming, Innovation is like that. It can be in the process of becoming a liberating force for human and social flourishing.
Thank you.
Maybe just to add, started thinking about this representation and participation, like how to enhance democracy and how to combine the idea we have parliament somewhere there, and then somehow disconnected, according to many, from the people. And then we have these ideas that democracy is participatory and an endless meeting of very local assemblies or something. So I think technology of this kind can perhaps help to combine a little bit. Like, for example, there's something processed there in the parliament, and immediately there would be a mechanism to figure out what communities it affects, and suddenly it's like participatory assemblies that might have an advisory role.
And
They
feedback.
in there it says beep, or right now my thing is being discussed in the parliament, and then we either gather together or discuss with AI facilitated process things, and it makes a feedback loop immediately or within 5 minutes to the parliament, and then the decisions would be based on more participatory kind of dimension, and then the thing about who makes the final decision can be, debated. Maybe the guys there would still make and vote, in the parliament and all that. But I think it could enhance and bring the local views more there. So I'm thinking about things like this, where
Or you could use ChatGPT when there's a kind of politician has said something and you ask, what did he mean? And then ChatGPT would tell you in the clear text that this is the message actually.
that's something like sort of fact-checking kind of thing.
I think what Teivo was sort of speaking highlights the interesting dynamic that what do we want the role of the representatives be? Because on many topics, even topics that I have actually knowledge on, I rather have not always as smart as I would hope, but usually fairly smart people to deliberate over that, and this sort of ideal of this part of representation, that they should have better knowledge than me as a lay person who, well, I will have a lot of opinions if they open something like that, but it might not be for the good of the society. It will be the good for me. I am happy to promote my own interests.
But this could combine it so that the citizen assemblies would have an advisory role. Like there's this debate about Extinction Rebellion proposing some kind of citizen assemblies and all that. And will they take over from the parliament? I don't think that's their vision. I think it's more like an advisory role and giving feedback there. And technology can facilitate that kind of stuff.
Okay, any other questions? So,
There is one.
one more.
Thank you for the very engaging panel discussion. My name is Chamini Nanakara. I would like to know whether there is any particular difference between individualistic cultures and collectivist cultures approach AI.
Individualistic culture and
Collective.
I think it's a really, really great question, because I think that in the kind of human rights scholarship, this is a big discussion that all of the human rights treaties are kind of individual based. We only have in the African charter the kind of family as a kind of collective perspective in the kind of African context. So otherwise it's only about individual rights and individual actors and individuals and individual protection and protection of individuals. How this kind of interplays in the kind of development of artificial intelligence, I have no clue, but I do think that that's a very, very important thing to think about. I don't know if you...
So I've been thinking a lot about TikTok from this perspective, because if you look its mechanics, where it shares similar kind of content and it actually provokes you to sort of create replications of previous content. This is where I spend your tax money. I follow TikTok heavily and so on. But I started to think that is some other aspect than maybe a bit more fame-driven or individualistic platforms like Instagram, where it's your personal profile that sort of people need to follow, whereas on TikTok you just get content, and it has also this really interesting content type where you basically take other person's content and create your own version
of
the same. And I'm thinking if this is a collective manifestation of some kind, and does it mean that these young people who are doing this actually try to join a collective social movement, maybe not politically driven social movement, but a dance movement of collective kind of some kind. And then I realized that I'm so old that I no longer understand TikTok. So then I stopped thinking about this in these kind of terms. But I was really thinking that do we see this, because that is one of the Chinese platform and it is more collective culture. So I was thinking that do we see something fundamental there? But then I realized that I'm just not understanding TikTok.
For me, it's dialectics, as I would answer it. You know, the goal is really total human liberation. So it's individual, but then the collective social condition is a precondition for realizing individual freedom. So we start with the society itself, the social and the collective, meaning the common good, so that you are able to also, as a human being, be more liberating. I think that's my approach to understanding liberation. But Teivo is more of an expert on this.
Just about the collective, I think sometimes there's a simplistic dichotomy between collectivist cultures and individualist cultures. Like, look at our place. We hear all the time that because this collective called Finland is facing an existential threat, we have to do this and that and limit those rights and violate this and that treaty. Or let's say capitalist corporations, we think it's kind of individualistic culture. No, these are big collectives. What is more collective than a collective corporation? Even the name implies collectiveness. And somehow we think, well, we live in an individualist culture when we give all decision-making power to big collectives that control our lives, called capitalist corporations. But we are in individualistic. My point is the sort of, I don't really know, and sometimes it's exaggerated. Oh, in the South, or indigenous context, something it's so collective, and there are individuals there too who think about their own rights as well. Like that's just on the collective individualist dichotomy. But how AI does that, I don't know.
I mean,
Okay, thank you. Another question.
My name is Arto Mustojoki. To my mind, the biggest problem in the world is that people don't understand each other. Could artificial intelligence somehow help us to understand each other better, even in peacemaking processes, not only in the parliament of Finland, and as a whole, in the whole society? Because there are a lot of misunderstandings between us, and it really is a big problem.
I think that if we go back to the Matti's point that if we think about artificial intelligence, it's human created. So I suppose the answer would be yes, if we want. If we would be really interested in kind of creating a kind of training the platforms, for example, for peace building. But it doesn't look like we would be there
No profits
yet.
there.
Yeah, I mean, somebody would need to make a big donation.
Yeah. There was a colleague of you and us all, actually, Timo Honkela, who made this thing called Peace Machine, Rauhankone, and his idea was that you have this algorithm-based AI-powered machine that will help different cultures and in conflict, then you understand the other and then you find peace. And then sometimes I was thinking, okay, you have, I don't know, let's think about some places in the Middle East. Let's think about certain pieces of land in Palestine and Israel and all that. And is it, okay, I understand perfectly what you want and you understand perfectly what I mean. But the question is either you go out or I go out, or, and so is it the base? I'm simplifying a little bit, but even if we understand the other perfectly, it doesn't necessarily mean that there will be peace. That was with Timo Honkela. He was a great, he died some time ago.
Yes, some time ago, and I think that
it was a nice plan.
At the time that when it was published, it seemed really futuristic and out there. Now it seems not that far away if someone really wants to put the effort. Now, of course, the question is that would that help? That I agree with Teivo that maybe not everything is about making, but as political scientists know about resource and resource conflicts and allocation of limited resources. So for that kind of situation, no matter how well I understand you,
Yeah.
might not help. But it would be interesting to see if someone now takes
Maybe
the
for
technology.
some local conflicts, like let's say there would be, let's go for example to Sodankylä and think about a building of a mine on the reindeer herders' land. So maybe in this kind of context where people actually do know, but they don't have the feeling that they have that they kind of knowledge and they kind of what they do, that it has any impact. So they feel that they are actually not heard or taken seriously. So maybe in that kind of context to create the kind of atmosphere that, okay, we take each other seriously, and the machine would force even the Finnish authorities, you know, to really listen, and the consequences would come out of that. So I think that context, that sounds like a possibility. I'm then thinking about Sudan and the warlords there. If they would be, they are only interested in money. So any kind of machine learning about understanding each other's viewpoints wouldn't, I suppose, help much.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think we start with the goal. If it's peace, say like innovation towards a particular public purpose or a common good and a social goal, and then we start from that, and then we design a particular technology towards that end. So AI is just a tool towards a particular end. Yeah. So that's I think the way to approach it. But right now, what underpins AI is the logic of competition within the capitalist framework. And I think that's where the problem is. And that's why, since yesterday when we had this discussion with colleagues here also about algorithms, I've been proposing that we really have to problematize the logic of competition. Because in regulation, in policy debates, they always take competition as a given. But for me, I want to problematize competition. They will say the problem is monopolization, but for me, monopolization is just the outcome of the logic of competition. The big tech oligarchs would like to buy their own competition or something like that. But still, competition is a problem. But we can also come up with a technology and AI that is based on the logic of cooperation and also towards the common realization of the common good.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here tonight, everyone. And thank you to our audience. We've got lots of people who came out tonight. The whole panel discussion has been filmed and will be available on our YouTube channel in the near future. So please check out our Instagram and website for more information about that. And we also will be having an event in the same venue in December. So please come to that event as well. And there we will be discussing the state of the world in 2024. But I think we all will have quite a lot to take home tonight. Lots of thoughts on artificial intelligence, human rights, democracy, and some very small but little glimmers of hope as well on what can be done to improve the situation. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for the pen. I'm not stealing it.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.